Welcome to the third video in this Learn to Code in JavaScript series. In the last video, we began learning about variables and how to use them to store numbers and text. Today, we're going to review a few different types of data that variables can store and why it's important to know what they're storing. So suppose we start off by creating a variable named bank account balance, and we initialize it to, let's say, 5 million. So the data type of this variable should be a number because 5 million is a number, but we can check using JavaScript using a console.log and a special JavaScript keyword named typeOf. We can check to see what bank account balance is actually storing. So using this code, if I hit run, we can see that the bank account balance is of type number. If we then create another variable, let's say on line 2, and let's call this teacher name, if I initialize it to Mr. G, and then I change my bank account balance in the console.log to teacher name, I can see what the data type of teacher name is. So let's run it, and we see that it's a string. This probably comes from text being a string of characters all put together. And just note that on line 2, my string has to be surrounded by single or double quotes in JavaScript. Because every variable can be declared with the keyword var, JavaScript is considered to be a weakly typed language. And this means that some odd things can happen if you start mixing data types. Like, what happens if I try to add teacher name to bank account balance, or adding a string to a number? Let's find out. On line 3, I'm going to create a new variable, and I'm going to call it what will happen. And I'm going to set it equal to teacher name, or the value of teacher name, plus the bank account balance. Okay, let me just drag this over a little bit to create more space. There we go. So what's going to happen? Well, let's find out. We can console.log what will happen and try to see what JavaScript is doing behind the scenes. So let me run this, and we see it says Mr. G 5 million right after it. So it looks like JavaScript is concatenating or combining the two. And actually, let's see what type of data this is. So let's put in a type of in front of this. And JavaScript is turning all of this into a string. But what's going to happen if let's say I add 9 to the end of this? So let me just drag this over just a little bit more. What's going to happen if I run this? So if I run it, it still says string. Let me see what the value is of what will happen. And it's Mr. G, 5 million, and then it has a 9. It looks like it didn't add the 9 to the 5 million, but it just concatenated all of that and turned it into one big string. So it looks like JavaScript is converting the 5 million and that 9 into strings and just putting them back to back to back. Some other programming languages are strongly typed, which means that we have to declare what type of data the variable is going to store right when we initialize it. Otherwise, we're going to get errors that are going to prevent us from running code like this. But that doesn't happen in JavaScript. JavaScript is like YOLO, I'll figure out the data type of the variable as I'm reading and interpreting the code, and if something doesn't work, I'll just turn it into a string maybe. Now you may be wondering how a scenario like the one I just presented could unfold. And the reason for that is that we can change the value of a variable after it's been declared and initialized. So let's say, for example, on line 5, I declare a variable, and let's say I name it age, and I set it equal to 94. So now age, if I were to do the type of, if I run that, age is a number. Right now, age is storing a number. But on the following line, let's say on line 6, I can do age equals, and then I could put in quotes and type in old. And now if I run it, age is now a string. So I've just changed the value of age, and I've changed its type at the same time. I changed it from being a number to being a string. I'm actually curious, what happens if I remove all of the assignments and I just leave var age and I see what the type of it is? So it looks like the type of age right now is undefined. So its value is undefined. If I remove the type of and I run it, its value will be undefined and its type will be undefined. So undefined is both a value and a type. So I guess it's kind of cool to know. There's one more data type that I want to go over in this video, and that's the one known as a boolean. And booleans can only have one of two possible values, either true or false. So on line 5, let's just remove this age, and let's declare a variable named cold outside and set it equal to true. If I then console.log the type of cold outside and run it, I will see that this is storing a boolean value. And you can see that true has a different color, which means that JavaScript is doing something different with that, or that it's a special keyword. I could also change the value of cold outside to equal false, and if I rerun it, it's still going to be a boolean value. Note that we don't use quotes when we write true or false for boolean values, otherwise they'll become strings. Booleans will be useful when we begin to use logic in our code. And most of you probably already do something similar in your heads before you walk out the door in the morning. So if cold outside equals true, you put on a jacket. But if cold outside is set to false in your head, you don't put on a jacket. I want to go over one last thing in this video. So far, we've only been using var as a JavaScript keyword to declare variables. But if you look at more recent code somewhere else, you may notice that programmers are also using two other keywords to declare their variables. In 2015, the JavaScript language was upgraded to include a couple new keywords for declaring these variables, let and const. Some people will say that let is the new var, and there are benefits to using let instead of var that I will get to in future videos when the situation arises. If I were to replace all my vars with let me do that right now. If we change it all to lets and I rerun it, it's still going to work exactly the same way, because I haven't written any code where the benefit comes into play. However, if I change all my lets into const, but let me do something different. On line 6, I'm going to reset cold outside to equal true. So I'm just reassigning it a different value. When I run it, JavaScript is noticing that I'm using a const on line 5, and then I'm trying to reassign its value on line 6. Const is a keyword that prevents a variable from having its value changed. And we can even see the error in the console. It says type error assignment to constant variable at, and then a whole bunch of text, and then at the end it says JS:6:13. So it looks like it's on line 6 that we're having the error. It's actually considered best practice to use constants now as a default, and to only use let and var in situations where it makes sense to, instead of using vars everywhere. So from now on, I'm going to try to default to using const, unless I'm anticipating changing the value of a variable later on. And I'll try to let you guys know what I'm thinking when I'm coding, so that you guys know why I'm using the specific keywords. However, there may be times where I forget and just out of habit go back to using vars. In the next video, I'm going to answer some questions that I've received and some questions that I anticipate some people may be having at this point. So I highly suggest that as you watch this video series, you ask questions in the comments section and give me feedback too, if there's anything I can do differently or if there's anything I can answer. Also, if you're finding this series to be helpful to you, I would appreciate it if you subscribed and shared the videos with a friend, a parent, or a teacher that wants to learn how to code or wants to learn JavaScript. See you in the next video.